Le Jour des Morts, All Souls, Dia de los Muertos. Why are these celebrated so close to All Saints? What are the reasons which led to the invention, the establishment, and the spread of this celebration throughout the Church and the world? You'll be interested to know that to answer this question, we have to dig into the history of the French Abbey of Cluny in the Middle Ages and the story of its fifth abbot, Odillon. As you will see, he might very well be the reason many celebrate their dead on this date. Hi, my name is Frederick Spitz. While completing my master in theology from the University of Strasbourg in France, I had to do a lot of research and assimilate a lot of materials. In this video series, I'll share some of the interesting findings and topics that piqued my interest. This particular episode is a short summary of a 30-minute presentation I made. If you're interested in reading my original paper with the slides in French, please email me and I'll send it to you. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy it and feel free to comment if you hate it, love it, or have any questions. Alright, before we focus on the Middle Ages and the many tales that come with the era, let's do a little chronology of how the dead were remembered, starting with antiquity. In the Roman Empire, the necropolises were places outside the cities, and the relationship with those who resided there was restricted to the families. There were also pagan celebrations for the dead. For example, there was an ancient Celtic pagan festival which took place on November 1st, which coincided with the Celtic New Year. Or there was the pagan festival of Anthesteria, meaning the flower festival. It was celebrated in mid-March in Athens. Its symbolism was that the hyacinths, roses, and crocuses they used were made scarlet by the blood of the departed, and thus contained part of their spirits. Similarly to the Dia de los Muertos, they believed that the dead could visit their home once a year and they put out some food for them. However, it is only around the 4th and 5th centuries that we start seeing traces of a possible intercession for the dead by the living. Saint Augustine, at the beginning of the 4th century, differentiates between three types of dead. The saints, they don't need anything from us. The great sinners, nothing can be done for them. And the lesser sinners, they could benefit from our prayers to possibly enter into communion with the saints. Pope Gregory I at the end of the 6th century also acknowledges that the lesser sins can be forgiven, like hay and wood can be burned. He uses the example of a brother named Justus. The poor soul had sinned by hiding 2 gold coins in his cell while having made a vow of poverty. And even though his body was first thrown into a manure pit, 30 days of prayers had been offered later to redeem his soul, a length of time considered similar to his penance. Between the 7th and 9th centuries, lists of names of dead brothers were kept in ivory diptychs, or different types of prayer books and records in monasteries. In medieval society, tasks were clearly defined, and if it was possible to pray for the dead, well, the monks had abandoned their lives to prayer. They were therefore the most qualified. So when did we start to celebrate All Souls, or a day of prayer for the dead? In the 8th century, All Saints started to be celebrated in England, and it spread through the Carolingian Empire during the 9th century. During this century, there were several attempts to install a day of prayer for the dead. Amalher, the Benedictine monk, wrote that he added a service for the dead shortly after All Saints. The reasoning behind this date was that a lot of souls after their death were, and I quote, not immediately in communion with the saints. So having this day close to All Saints offered the most proximity to help them. But other dates were used in a similar fashion. Pentecost Day, December 17, November 14, January 26. Even though the idea was around and different dates were tried, the date of November 2nd for the Jour des Morts is universally attributed to Saint Odillon, the 5th abbot of Cluny, from 994 to 1049. So, what was the Abbey of Cluny and who was Odillon? The Benedictine Abbey, located in the central eastern region of France, now Saône-et-Loire, was founded in 910 by the Duke of Aquitaine, under the protection of Saint Peter and Saint Paul. One of the reasons the abbey grew so quickly is that it was granted an exemptive privilege in 998 by Pope Gregory V, meaning that they were only under Rome's authority, which was geographically far away. This exemption was also extended to all dependent abbeys which followed Cluny's customs in 1024 by John XIX, who declared Cluny to be Domus Pietatis, or House of Piety. While Odillon was abbot, Cluny grew considerably. There was an increase in the number of donations, especially their intercession for the dead, and the reputation of the abbey spread rapidly. We can infer this from the Cluny's records, but also from the stories that were produced about the abbey. In the Middle Ages, magical stories about revelations in dreams or ghosts were a very powerful way to spread an idea or convince people of something. There are several tales that were produced about Cluny and Odillon. They mostly relate how good the abbey was at praying for the dead to save their souls. In one story, even the ghost of a dead bishop is said to have requested their prayers. But one particular tale is the most revealing about the sufferings of the souls in need of prayers. It was written by Jolstad, Odillon's first biographer after Odillon's death. Here's a quick summary. A monk was on his way back from Jerusalem sailing the Ionian Sea. The wind pushes his boat on a small island where an hermit lived. They started to talk while waiting for it to calm down. When the monk mentioned that he was from Aquitaine, the hermit wanted to know if he knew of a great monastery named Cluny, whose abbot was Odillon. When asked why he wanted to know this, the hermit starts telling his story. He told the monk that there was a place nearby where God made fire violently spit into the sky. A lot of sinners were being tortured there by demons, and the hermit heard their complaints several times. They asked that God deliver them through the prayers of the monks and the gifts given to the poor, especially from the Abbey of Cluny and its abbot. The hermit then tells the monks to repeat his story and to multiply the prayers. An interesting fact about this story is that Mount Vesuvius seems to fit the geographical location of this event, and that the volcano erupted 8 times during the first 1,000 years of our era, with an eruption recorded in 968. Could the people telling this story believe that the volcano was a physical location of a purgatory? Could a known physical event be used to anchor the story in truth and convince family members to request masses for their dead relatives? Nobody can really tell. Just like we cannot exactly tell when the Jour des Morts was first celebrated at Cluny. We can only infer from the source that it was first celebrated there between 994 and 1009. After that, the date and customs of the celebration spread very quickly. First to the abbeys that were its dependents, but also in other places such as the Hirsau Abbey, which was in what is now Germany, or abbeys in Normandy. Lanfranc, a Benedictine prior, also imported this tradition with him to Canterbury. This propagation was so fast that in the 12th century, the theologian Jean Bellec mentioned that the celebration extends to the entire Roman Church. But the records of Cluny can also help us see why these monks were such professionals at rehabilitating souls. First, on November 2nd, brothers celebrated private masses for the repose of souls. It was also customary to feed and take care of 12 poor. The poor person would represent the soul of the departed in need of help. Or if a monk died, masses had to be celebrated with no interruption for 30 days, which equaled 900 masses. And a poor person had to be fed and cared for in the same amount of time. Second, the name of the departed were recorded in the necrology record book. 2 types of names were recorded. First, the monks, and then those called familiars. These familiars were sometimes rich people who gave away their possessions to join the abbey and guarantee the prayers of the monk for their souls. This brought up a new sociology of giving. It was no longer a free gift, it became a transaction where eternity was received in exchange for earthly possessions. However, even though the money collected by Cluny was used to feed and care for the monks, it does not automatically mean that they were using the fear of being tortured in purgatory for their personal gain. Even though some commentaries note that they were wearing fur coats and eating expensive meats, it must be noted that in this region of France, winters were quite harsh and that wearing a fur coat and eating meat wasn't that uncommon. It is also important to note that part of the economy of Cluny and the liturgy of the Jour des Morts was to feed and care for the poor. So this was not a simple two-way economy. But while this economy of death in Cluny spread quite rapidly, it wasn't without some controversy. Followers of Pierre de Bruy, named the Petrobrusians, were quite against the idea of being able to intercede in favor of the dead with prayers. Among other things, they believed the afterlife was a reward, not a place where you could gain salvation. Therefore, if someone did not obtain salvation in this life, they wouldn't be able to gain it with prayers from Cluny. Maybe we'll prepare a video where we'll read some medieval tales. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss it. But in conclusion, we can say that celebrating all the dead wasn't a fully original idea that sprung in the 10th or 11th century. However, we can see that fear of purgatory seemed to have been a common cause of anxiety around the year 1000. Therefore, doing it on a date close to All Saints seemed like a logical approach to help close the distance between these souls and the saints. The idea that professional monks could intercede in someone's favor to help them reach communion with the saints, along with the level of devotion shown by the monks at Cluny in that department, helped spread the customs of the abbey in a viral way. This coming week, as we remember those we loved and lost, let's appreciate how we as people have been praying for them in many ways throughout history. And regardless of whether we pray for them as an intercession, to them as saints, or if we put out cakes and flowers or simply tell their stories, let's rejoice in the fact that we'll all be remembered in a way. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of these with you. In the meantime, have a great day and see you in the next one.